He rescued a broken cyborg, but she rescued his heart. The junkyard discovery. Twin suns blazed mercilessly over the desolate scrapyards of Nexus Prime. Towers of broken starships and rusting cybernetics loomed like metallic mountains, their jagged silhouettes cutting across the crimson horizon. The air stank of burnt circuitry and scorched alloy paradise, for no one except maybe Martin Howard. Martin trudged through the maze of wreckage, his battered grey protective suit creaking with every step. Oil stains streaked his chest plate, and the beard beneath his helmet visor hid a face carved by years of weariness. He muttered under his breath, tapping the side of a handheld energy scanner that flickered as unreliably as everything else on this forsaken rock. Another day in paradise, he growled. Suddenly the device chirped a sharp, insistent signal. Martin frowned, squinting at the readout. The scan showed something strange, something impossible, a hybrid signature, organic and synthetic fused together. Not the kind of thing you found in a graveyard of dead machines. His boots crunched over shattered plating as he followed the trail deeper winding between towering hull fragments. The scanner's tone quickened, rising in pitch, guiding him through the labyrinth of wreckage. At last, he rounded the corner of a collapsed shuttle hull and froze. Half buried in debris lay a figure, a woman. Her skin shimmered in soft violet hues as if kissed by alien starlight. Cascades of copper hair spilled across the ground like molten metal, tangled among twisted steel. Her body was not wholly flesh. Intricate cybernetics gleamed where organic tissue merged seamlessly with machinery. Sparks hissed from severed conduits at her side, but her form, elegant, haunting, undeniably alive, remained intact. Martin's breath caught in his throat. He knelt slowly, brushing away shards of metal with calloused hands. "Holy shit," he whispered. Even unconscious, her beauty carried a gravity that pulled at something long dormant in him. Not a factory-made pleasure bot, not cheap synth scrap. This was artistry, a masterpiece abandoned in the dirt. Martin's voice softened, almost reverent, as he studied her. "Well, aren't you something special?" The wind howled through the scrapyard, scattering dust and ash, as Martin realized his life was about to change forever. Awakening Aris. Martin's hover truck rattled down the neon-lit streets of New Providence, its aging engines coughing against the night air. In the back, carefully strapped to a jury-rigged stretcher, lay the strange cyborg woman he had pulled from the wreckage. Even powered down, her presence was magnetic. The way copper hair caught the faint glow of the city lights made Martin's chest tighten in ways he hadn't felt in years. Back at his workshop, a converted warehouse on the outskirts of the city massive, reinforced doors ground open at his approach. Inside the place was a chaotic blend of grease-stained workbenches, jury-rigged machinery, and flickering diagnostic monitors. It wasn't glamorous, but it was his sanctuary, and now it was hers too. He transferred her carefully to his primary workstation. Under the bright white lab lights, her design stunned him even more. Seamless integration of flesh and steel, nerve endings fused with fiber optic conduits, backup systems failing, but a core still intact. Martin exhaled, shaking his head. "All right, sweetheart," he murmured, pulling up his tools. "Let's see what makes you tick." Hours passed in a blur of delicate adjustments. He reconnected damaged neural pathways, rerouted power around fried circuits, and reinforced fragile biosynthetic tissue. Sweat rolled down his temples as the night deepened, his hands working with a precision that came from years of salvaging the galaxy's broken things. Only this time it felt different. This wasn't just salvage. This mattered. At last, with dawn light seeping through the grimy windows, Martin wiped his brow and reached for the activation switch. His thumb hesitated, hovering over the button. He muttered to himself, "Here goes nothing." The system hummed. For a moment, silence. Then her eyes fluttered open. Silver irises swirled like liquid mercury, focusing on him with startling clarity. For a long heartbeat, neither spoke. Martin felt his chest tighten under that gaze. Then softly, with a voice like a melody woven through static, she said, "Hello." Martin swallowed hard, then managed a lopsided smile. "Welcome back to the land of the living." Her lips curved faintly. "I'm Aris." He nodded, relief and awe washing over him all at once. "Martin Howard. And I'd bet you've got one hell of a story to tell." Sparks of humanity. The workshop had grown quiet again after Aris's awakening. The emergency lights had dimmed to their low cycle, humming softly against the silence. Martin sat back in his chair, rubbing at the tired ache in his eyes. His tools lay scattered across the workstation: soldering pens, micro-drivers, bundles of insulated wiring. He should have been exhausted, but instead he felt wired, strung taut, like the circuits he had just pieced together. Across the workbench, Aris moved her hand slowly, the faint whir of servos mixing with the whisper of flesh on steel. Her violet skin shimmered faintly in the glow of the overhead lamps, and for the first time since she opened her eyes, Martin saw something like wonder cross her face. "I can feel it," she murmured. Her voice carried a melodic undertone, but there was fragility beneath it. She flexed her fingers, eyes widening at the response. Not just pressure, texture, temperature, even air currents. Martin leaned forward, intrigued. "Good. That means the neural pathways are stabilizing." Her silver gaze flicked to him, amused. "You sound like you're writing a diagnostic report, not talking to someone who just got her body back." He grunted, hiding a smirk. "Force of habit. I fix things. Been doing it most of my life. Don't know how to talk about it any other way." "You're not just fixing," she said softly, curling her hand into a fist and releasing it again. "You're giving me back me." Her words caught him off guard, hitting harder than he expected. He cleared his throat, busying himself with adjusting a scanner. "Well, I wouldn't go that far. I'm just a grease monkey with steady hands." But Aris's smile deepened. "Grease monkey or not, your touch feels different. It's precise but also gentle." Martin shot her a look. "Careful. Keep talking like that and I might think you're flirting." "Maybe I am." She teased, her copper hair spilling over her shoulders as she tilted her head. "Would that bother you?" Martin opened his mouth, then closed it. His beard hid the twitch of a smile he couldn't quite suppress. "I'm trying to work here." She shifted, letting her synthetic joints click into alignment. "And doing wonderfully. Every time you reconnect a pathway, it's like you're teaching me how to feel again." Her words carried a weight he didn't know how to answer. So he focused instead on the task at hand, leaning over to realign the interface between her spine and cybernetics. His gloved fingers brushed against the seam of organic tissue and synthetic plating. Aris inhaled sharply. "See," she whispered. "Real." Martin froze. He hadn't meant to touch her that way, not intimately, just mechanically. But the look in her eyes, the softness of her voice, it sent a shiver crawling up his own spine. "Professional," he muttered, voice a little rougher than before. "This is just calibration." "And yet," she said, a mischievous curve to her lips, "your heartbeat disagrees." The hours wore on each connection Martin restored, bringing Aris closer to full functionality. And with each adjustment, their conversation deepened. No longer technician and machine, but two souls brushing against each other through words, touches, and silences. At one point, Martin paused, staring at the diagnostic monitor. "Your neural interfaces, they are remarkable. The way your organic nervous system integrates with synthetic nodes. Beautiful, really. I've never seen anything like it. Aris's cheeks faintly luminescent beneath violet skin darkened ever so slightly. Beautiful, huh? You do know how to charm a girl. He shook his head, just stating facts. But even he could feel the truth in her words. Facts had turned into admiration. Admiration into something else. Something warmer. As the evening dragged on, Martin allowed himself a moment of rest. He leaned back against the edge of the workbench, pulling off his gloves. Across from him, Aris sat up a little straighter, her movements far more fluid now than when he'd first found her. She looked less like a discarded machine and more like a person. A striking, extraordinary person. Her silver eyes tracked him with quiet curiosity. You said you fix things because you can't help it. Why? He blinked. What do you mean? You don't just repair out of necessity. You do it with care, precision, like it matters, even when you thought I was just salvage. Martin's chest tightened. He stared down at the grease stains on his hands. Because things break, people break, and sometimes fixing what's broken is the only way I feel like I'm holding myself together. Aris tilted her head, her copper hair spilling forward. So you fixed me to fix yourself. Maybe he admitted. His voice was quiet raw, but somewhere along the way I realized you're not just a thing to repair, you're... He stopped himself, shaking his head. Forget it. She leaned closer, her synthetic systems humming softly. No, tell me. Martin met her gaze. Those swirling silver irises reflected back every ounce of his hesitation. And yet, they were alive, more alive than half the people he'd ever met. You're a miracle, he whispered. The words hung between them, heavier than the silence that followed. Then Aris laughed, soft, warm sound that cracked something open in his chest. Careful, Martin. Keep saying things like that, and I might start believing I'm more than just spare parts. You are, he said firmly. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. The hum of machines filled the air, but it felt distant, unimportant. Aris broke the silence first. These new sensors you've installed, they make everything more vivid. Every brush of air, every vibration in the floor. Even the sound of your voice, it resonates differently now, stronger. Yeah, Martin asked, raising a brow. How strong? Her lips curved into a sly smile. Strong enough that I can tell when you're lying about keeping this professional. He groaned, dragging a hand over his face. You're impossible. Or maybe she countered, I'm exactly what you needed. Lightning flashed outside, throwing stark shadows across the workshop walls. The storm that had been brewing all day finally broke, thunder rattling the glass panes overhead. Martin instinctively glanced at the diagnostic screens, his first concern always the machinery. But Aris only watched him with that unnerving, unblinking silver gaze. You hear that? She asked softly. Yeah, electromagnetic interference. This storm will fry the city's processors for hours. No, she said, leaning closer. I meant your heart. Martin stiffened. She reached out, touching his wrist. Her synthetic fingertips, newly calibrated, traced the beat pulsing beneath his skin. It's racing, she whispered, because of me. For a moment, he forgot the storm. Forgot the workshop. Forgot the entire world beyond those walls. It was just her violet skin, glowing in the lightning's flash, copper hair, shining like molten fire, silver eyes burning into him. Martin exhaled slowly. Yeah, he admitted, because of you. The thunder rolled again, closer this time, shaking the workshop's foundations. The emergency lights flickered, throwing them into brief darkness. In that half-second of shadow, Martin felt her hand slide into his. Warm, real, alive. When the lights steadied again, she was smiling, not mechanical, not programmed, but utterly, achingly human. And Martin realized with a jolt, as fierce as the storm outside, that he wasn't just repairing a broken cyborg. He was falling in love. A family forged. The storm had passed by morning, leaving New Providence humming with the uneven rhythm of recovery. Streetlights flickered uncertainly, neon signs pulsed in jagged intervals, and the air carried the sharp tang of ozone. Martin guided his battered hover truck through the bustling market district. Aris seated beside him in the passenger seat. She wore a cloak pulled tight around her frame, the hood casting her silver eyes in shadow. Even with her systems repaired, even with her movements now fluid and confident, Martin knew the city wasn't ready for someone like her, not yet. Not until they decided she could be more than machine. Aris seemed unbothered. Her gaze shifted constantly, taking in the chaos of life around her. The marketplace overflowed with sound and color merchants, shouting over stalls piled with alien produce vendors, hawking black market tech salvaged from crashed ships, children darting between towering aliens with mischievous laughter. For Aris, every sensation was new again, her newly calibrated sensors drinking in the flood of life. This city, she said softly, it's loud, messy, and full of contradictions. Martin chuckled. Yeah, that's about right. It's beautiful. He glanced at her, surprised by the genuine awe in her tone. For him, New Providence was a collection of bad smells, unreliable circuits, and jobs that barely paid enough to keep his truck in the air. But in Aris's eyes, it was alive. They were weaving through a cluster of food stalls when Aris suddenly stiffened. Her silver eyes narrowed, focusing on something deeper in the crowd. What is it? Martin asked, his hand instinctively brushing the pistol strapped to his side. I'm detecting elevated heart rates, adrenaline spikes. Her voice was sharp, now precise. 2 blocks ahead. Martin gunned the engine, the hover truck sliding into a narrow alley before stopping abruptly. They leapt out and ran weaving through the crowd until the scene revealed itself. A small figure, bolted between stalls, desperately clutching a stolen fruit. Behind him, 3 alien thugs gave chase, their snarls sending bystanders scattering. The child stumbled, scales flashing iridescent in panic. He couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. Thieving little pest, one of the pursuers roared. We'll teach you what happens when you steal from us. Martin's jaw clenched. His boots pounded against the ground as he surged forward. Hey! He barked, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd survived wars, not just markets. Back off! The thugs hesitated only a second, but it was enough. Martin scooped the child up, lifting him effortlessly into his arms. The boy's scales shimmered a deep blue, the Nexian equivalent of sheer terror. Aris was at Martin's side in an instant, her cloak swirling as she placed herself between the thugs and her newfound family. Her violet skin caught the fractured sunlight, her silver eyes burning like molten stars. The lead thug sneered, baring sharp teeth. That little rat stole from us. He's ours to discipline. Martin's voice dropped into a dangerous growl. He's a kid, hungry. That's not discipline, that's cruelty. The thug spat on the ground. Pay for what he took then. Triple the price. Martin's hand tightened around the boy. He could feel how light the child was, how thin. Malnourished, his stomach twisted. With his free hand, he pulled out a credit chip, punching in the amount without hesitation. He tossed it at the thug's feet. There, paid, now get lost. The thugs exchanged a look, but didn't argue. The promise of easy credits outweighed their need for vengeance. Muttering curses, they slunk back into the crowd, leaving Martin, Aris, and the boy standing in the wake of the confrontation. The child trembled in Martin's arms, his wide alien eyes darting between them. You're not going to hurt me. Martin softened his voice. Not a chance, kid. What's your name? Ren, the boy whispered. His small voice cracked, full of exhaustion and fear. My parents. The factory collapsed last month. They're gone. Martin's throat tightened. He had seen the reports industrial negligence, dozens dead. He'd cursed the universe at the time, but now the tragedy had a face. Aris leaned closer, her cloak shifting enough to reveal the gleam of synthetic plating. She extended a hand, her touch, gentle, her sensors running a quiet scan. "He's malnourished," she said softly, her voice tinged with sorrow. "Old injuries too, bones that never healed properly." Ren flinched at her touch, then blinked when he realized she wasn't pulling away, wasn't recoiling from him. Slowly his scales shifted from fearful blue to cautious green, the Nexian signal of tentative hope. "You're not afraid of me?" he asked. Aris smiled, though there was sadness in her expression. "Why would we be afraid of you? My girlfriend here is a cyborg," Martin added with a grin. "And I'm a human from a planet most people around here haven't even heard of. Kid, we're not exactly in a position to judge." Ren's eyes widened. "You'd let me come with you?" Martin and Aris exchanged a look. It wasn't just a glance, it was a whole conversation. Fear, responsibility, and something deeper, recognition. Aris turned back to the boy and crouched, so they were eye level. "Would you like a hot meal and a safe place to sleep?" Ren's scales flickered bright yellow, now Nexian joy. He nodded so hard it almost toppled him from Martin's arms. That evening, their workshop home felt utterly transformed. Where once it had been a sanctuary for two lonely souls, it now carried the warmth of something else, something that felt dangerously like a family. Ren sat at the kitchen counter, devouring his third bowl of nutrient-rich soup. Martin scanned the boy's broken arm with his portable device, muttering about poor bone fusion and alloy-supported treatments. Aris moved gracefully between them, anticipating needs with uncanny precision. "The brake never set right," Martin said, frowning at the scan. "But with the right components we can fix it. I've already drafted 3 possible designs," Aris replied, her silver eyes glowing faintly as data scrolled across her internal HUD. "His bone density suggests we should use the lighter alloy series. More flexibility, less strain." Ren blinked between them, his mouth still full of soup. "You two. You're like a team." Martin chuckled, glancing at Aris. "The best kind." Something passed between them, then something wordless but powerful. Aris's lips curved in a small knowing smile, and Martin felt heat crawl up his neck. Later, after Ren had been tucked into the spare room with promises of safety and warmth, Martin and Aris found themselves in the quiet of their private quarters. The workshop hummed with the familiar noises of machinery, but the silence between them was heavier, fuller than before. "We just adopted a kid," Martin said, still sounding slightly stunned. Aris pressed against him, her copper hair brushing his cheek. "We did." He turned his head, studying her, having second thoughts. Her silver eyes gleamed in the dim light. "No, are you?" "Not a chance," he whispered, pulling her close. "It feels right, like everything else about us." Her smile softened into something radiant, and when their lips met, the kiss carried a tenderness that was different from before. Less desperate, more profound. This wasn't just survival anymore. This wasn't just repair. This was the beginning of a family. Threats and defiance. The workshop was quiet, except for the faint hum of machinery and the steady scratching of Martin's tools. He sat at the workbench, showing Ren how to resolder a circuit board. The boy's small-scaled hands trembled with effort, but his wide eyes gleamed with determination. Steady, Martin instructed, guiding Ren's wrist with his own calloused hand. "It's not about force, it's about precision. Gentle, like you're convincing the wire to behave." Ren grinned his scales, shifting to a soft green of concentration. "Like you convinced that scanner to work yesterday." Martin chuckled. "Exactly like that." Across the room, Aris moved with graceful efficiency, preparing their evening meal. Though she no longer needed to eat, she had taken to cooking with enthusiasm, her senses guiding her like a master chef. She hummed softly to herself, and for one brief, fragile moment, the workshop felt less like a hideout and more like a home. Then the console on the far wall chimed. A priority transmission. Martin stiffened. He hadn't given their frequency to anyone but trusted friends. With a wary glance at Aris, he crossed the room and activated the holographic display. The image that flared to life froze her in place. Tax Ven. His aristocratic features were sharp and smug, his tailored robes shimmering with wealth. Cold, calculating eyes studied them with predatory delight. Well, well, Thax purred. My missing property looks remarkably well maintained. Aris's hands clenched at her sides, but her voice when it came was steady. I am not your property. Thax's smile widened, teeth gleaming. Temporarily misplaced then, but now that I've located you, I expect your immediate return. The modifications your companion has made are impressive. They'll only increase your value. Martin stepped forward, placing himself between Aris and the hologram. His jaw was tight, his voice sharp enough to cut steel. She's not for sale. She's not property at all. How charmingly naive. Thax's tone dripped with condescension. I hold her ownership documents. The law is clear. You have 24 hours to deliver her to the Crystal Palace. If you refuse. He let the words hang, his smile turning cruel. I will be forced to take less pleasant measures. The transmission cut off, leaving only silence. Aris stood motionless, silver eyes distant. He'll come for me, she whispered, and when he does, he'll hurt you, and ran. Martin turned to her, his hands gripping her shoulders firmly. No one is hurting you. No one is taking you away, not after everything we've built. Her gaze flicked to Ren, who huddled close, scales shifting anxiously. We've only just become a family, she said softly. I can't. You won't lose us. Martin interrupted, his voice iron. We fight together. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Aris inhaled slowly, her systems humming, as if aligning with his determination. She nodded once decisively. Then we prepare. The next hours were a blur of furious activity. Martin dug through crates of old equipment, pulling out tools and scraps that could be repurposed into defenses. Plasma cutters were refitted into short-range blasters. His welding drones were reprogrammed into sentry units. Even the battered exosuit gathering dust in the corner was stripped and reforged into something more lethal. Across the workshop, Aris ran complete diagnostics on her body. Her enhanced sensors revealed something she hadn't known, hidden subroutines Martin had installed during her repairs. Protocols for self-defense. She looked at him across the room, her silver eyes glowing faintly. You gave me combat protocols. Martin didn't look up from the plasma coil he was modifying. Defensive ones, he corrected. I wanted you to be able to protect yourself if it ever came to this. A smile tugged at her lips even as tension knotted her chest. My hero. She crossed the room, pressing close against his back. Her synthetic sensors picked up the immediate spike in his heart rate. Later he muttered gruffly, though his hand briefly squeezed hers. After we deal with this. Her smile deepened. Later she echoed. That night, after Ren had fallen asleep, curled under a patch blanket, Martin and Aris stood in the dim glow of the workshop. Their preparations were nearly complete, but unease hung thick in the air. They'll come for me, Aris said quietly, her voice trembling despite the steel in her systems. Martin turned, cupping her face in his calloused hands. Let them try. I didn't pull you out of a scrap heap just to lose you to some entitled bastard. Her silver eyes softened and she leaned into his touch. You make me feel whole, not a machine, not an object, just me. He kissed her, then fierce and unyielding a promise pressed into her very core. Their love that night was desperate, defiant, every touch a declaration. We belonged to no one but each other. Dawn came with trouble. The workshop's alarms blared as a convoy of black hovercraft surrounded the building. Heavily augmented enforcers poured out hulking figures of muscle and machine, their weapons gleaming. Martin emerged first deceptively casual as he wiped grease from his hands. "Sorry, boys. No property units here. Just my family." The lead enforcer sneered. "The human's delusional. He thinks he can love a machine." A voice rang out behind Martin, sharp as a blade. "That's your mistake." Aris stepped into view, her systems humming with power, violet skin glowing faintly in the morning light. Her silver eyes burned as she spoke. "Being part machine doesn't make me less capable of love. It makes me better at it. I can quantify exactly how much I love him, down to the last decimal point." The enforcers snarled and raised their weapons. Martin just smiled. "Now, sweetheart." Aris lifted her hands. Energy surged through her systems. With a brilliant flash, she unleashed a precise electromagnetic pulse that cascaded through the courtyard. One by one, the enforcers collapsed their cybernetic implants, sparking as they failed. The leader gasped, falling to his knees. "Impossible! You're just a pleasure model." "She's a masterpiece," Martin said proudly, standing tall beside her. "And she's chosen to be with me. That's called free will." Moments later, a sleek hovercar descended from the skies, its polished hull gleaming. Thax Ven himself emerged, his fury barely contained. His eyes swept over the fallen enforcers, then locked on Aris with venom. "This is illegal," he spat. "She is my property." But another voice cut through the tension. "Actually, Thax, you're wrong." From the shadows stepped Martin's old friend, a lawyer with a sly grin and a data slate in hand. According to New Providence salvage laws, abandoned property in designated waste areas becomes the legal possession of whoever recovers it. And I've filed the documentation on Martin's behalf. She isn't yours anymore. She's free. Thax's face purpled with rage. "This isn't over." Aris's silver eyes flared, her voice low and dangerous. "Leave now, before I demonstrate more of my upgrades." For once, Thax said nothing. With a snarl, he retreated to his car, his pride as battered as his men. When the courtyard finally cleared, Ren peeked out from the workshop door, eyes wide. "Is it over?" Martin turned, pulling both the boy and Aris into his arms. "It's over. No one's taking our family apart." Later, in the safety of their private quarters, Martin and Aris held each other close. Her synthetic skin thrummed softly where it touched his. "From scrap to salvation," she whispered. "From lonely mechanic to family man," he replied, kissing her hair. "No one can take that away from us." And though danger still lurked in the galaxy in that moment, they knew one truth with absolute certainty. They were no longer broken pieces. They were whole, together. Victory and liberation. The night after Thax's first failed attempt was restless. Martin lay awake on the cot in their private quarters, staring at the dim ceiling while Aris rested against him. Her copper hair shimmered faintly in the low light, her body warm where synthetic system melded seamlessly with flesh. Even in the stillness, he could feel the tension humming through her frame, like a blade coiled, waiting for the next strike. "They'll be back," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the hum of the workshop generators. Martin stroked a hand through her hair, his rough voice firm. "Then we'll be ready." Aris tilted her face up, silver eyes, reflecting faint glimmers of fear and resolve. "They won't stop, Martin. Men like Thax never do. Maybe not," he admitted, "but men like me don't stop either, especially when family's on the line." Her lips curved in a soft, bittersweet smile, and she whispered family as if tasting the word for the first time. Dawn brought the sound of engines. Martin was already awake, armor strapped over his work clothes, tools converted into weapons strapped to his belt. Ren peeked from behind a crate, scales shimmering a nervous orange, but determination glinting in his wide eyes. Outside, the rumble grew louder until it shook the ground beneath them. A convoy of black hovercraft descended, flanking an ornate central vehicle. From it emerged Tax Ven himself, robes pristine, despite the dust of the scrapyard, his smug grin intact. "You had your chance," Thax announced, his voice carrying across the courtyard, like a theatrical performance. Behind him, a squad of heavily augmented mercenaries fanned out, weapons primed. "Now I'll take what is mine." Aris stepped forward, cloak billowing, silver eyes blazing. "I am not yours. I was discarded, abandoned. You gave up any claim the day you left me to rot in the dirt." Thax's smile soured, but his voice remained smooth. "You're a machine. You don't decide. I do." Martin stepped beside her, arms crossed. "Funny thing about machines, Thax. You keep treating them like tools they eventually break, but you treat them like people. They fight back." The mercenaries leveled their weapons. Martin didn't flinch. Now he muttered. At his cue, hidden sentry drones powered up around the perimeter, their improvised plasma coils whining with deadly potential. Aris lifted her hands, her upgraded systems glowing faintly as she prepared a pulse. But before the first shot was fired, a new voice rang out. "Hold it right there." From the shadows of the scrapyard emerged a tall figure in formal robes, Martin's lawyer friend, data slate in hand, flanked by a pair of city enforcers. "I think you'll want to see this," Tax the lawyer said coolly, holding up the glowing document. "According to New Providence Salvage Law Section 14B, abandoned property in designated waste zones legally transfers to the salvager." Martin filed the claim the day he pulled Aris from the wreckage. She belongs to no one but herself. The courtyard buzzed with whispers as the enforcers activated their recorders. Thax's face twisted, the color rising to an unhealthy shade of purple. "This is outrageous," he bellowed. "She is a prototype worth millions." "She's a person," Martin cut in sharply, his voice echoing. He placed a protective hand on Aris's shoulder. "And she chose me. That's something you'll never understand." Aris stepped forward, her voice steady as steel. "Leave Thax before I demonstrate more of my upgrades." The standoff stretched taut as a wire ready to snap. Then, with a snarl, Thax gestured angrily. His mercenaries surged forward. Aris unleashed her pulse. The air lit up with crackling energy, mercenaries collapsing to their knees as implants overloaded. Drones fired precision bursts, disarming them before they could recover. Within moments, the battlefield fell silent, except for the hum of disabled weapons. Thax stumbled backward, fury blazing in his eyes. "This isn't over, Howard. You can't change what she is." Martin advanced, his shadow falling over the trembling aristocrat. "No, Thax, you can't change what she is. And what she is free." Thax's mouth worked soundlessly. He spun on his heel, retreating to his hovercar with what dignity he could salvage. The convoy lifted off moments later, disappearing into the morning sky. Silence settled over the scrapyard. The enforcers confirmed the validity of the salvage law, nodding respectfully before departing. Martin powered down the drones, his shoulders sagging in exhaustion. Ren darted out from his hiding place, eyes wide. "You won." Aris turned to him, her smile radiant despite the lingering tension. "We won," she corrected, pulling him into a hug. Martin wrapped his arms around them both, his rough voice thick with emotion. "No one's taking this family apart. Not now, not ever." That night, as the three of them sat together in the workshop, the air felt different, lighter, freer. For the first time, Martin allowed himself to truly believe they were safe. Aris sat close, her synthetic skin warm against his side, her silver eyes gleaming softly. From scrap to salvation, she murmured. Martin kissed the top of her head. From salvage to family. Ren giggled sleepily from where he dozed across their laps. The best team, he mumbled. Martin smiled, his calloused hand resting on Aris's. For once, his heart didn't race with tension or fear. It beat steady, strong, certain. They had won, and together they would keep winning. The new dawn, the days after Thax's retreat, passed in a blur. For the first time, since Martin had dragged Aris out of the scrapyard, the workshop felt safe. The alarms were silent, the doors secure, and the air carried not the tension of impending violence, but the warmth of routine. Martin found himself doing things he hadn't done in years, cooking breakfast instead of ration bars, teaching Ren how to fix old hoverboards, listening to Aris hum softly while she tuned diagnostic scanners just for fun. Life hadn't grown simple exactly, but it had become whole. And then the invitation arrived. The holoconsole buzzed, projecting the image of a dignified woman with cybernetic implants woven seamlessly into her temples. She carried herself with an air of quiet authority. Mr. Howard, Miss Aris. Her voice was clear, professional. I am Dr. Elena Reyes, Director of the Galactic Institute of Cybernetic Research. We've followed recent events in New Providence with great interest. Your work and your bond challenge everything we thought we knew about human-cyborg integration. We would like to invite you to join us. Martin blinked. Join you doing what? Leading Dr. Reyes said simply, Mr. Howard, we offer you the position of Head of Ethical Cybernetics. Miss Aris, we would like you to serve as consultant for our new Cyborg Rights Initiative. Together, you could help reshape the galaxy's future. And Ren, she added with a small smile, would have access to the best education and care available. The message ended, leaving silence in the workshop. Rain looked up at them, his scales flashing with excited patterns. A real school with other kids and xenobiology labs. Martin scratched his beard torn. It's a lot. Leaving New Providence, leaving the life we've built. Aris pressed a hand to his chest, her silver eyes glowing softly. Our life isn't about where we are, Martin. It's about who we are, together. Her words broke through his hesitation. He exhaled, a slow smile spreading across his face. Then let's do it. The Institute was unlike anything they had ever seen. Their transport descended through crystalline skies to reveal a sprawling campus of glass spires and floating platforms. Advanced laboratories shimmered with energy fields. Students and researchers of a dozen different species moved in harmony, cybernetics gleaming like works of art rather than marks of survival. Ren nearly burst with excitement, pointing out every alien creature he saw. Aris's sensors drank in the vibrant data flooding the campus, her curiosity limitless. And Martin felt something he hadn't in years. Possibility. Dr. Reyes greeted them personally, her augmented eyes sparkling with warmth. Your work is revolutionary, Mr. Howard. You've created something extraordinary. Aris's voice was steady but gentle. He didn't create me. He helped me become who I was always meant to be. Reyes smiled knowingly. Exactly. That's why we need both of you. Love, integration, choice, your bond proves it's possible. Their new life began quickly. Martin's lab was expansive, filled with equipment he could once only dream of. For the first time, he wasn't cobbling together repairs from junk. He was building, innovating, designing systems to change lives. Aris, meanwhile, became the voice of something bigger than herself. She spoke before councils consulted on policies and shared her story with a bravery that inspired countless others. For cyborgs once dismissed as property, she became a symbol, a beacon. Ren thrived at the Institute's academy. His sharp mind soaked up knowledge like a sponge. His fascination with xenobiology blossomed his scales, flashing bright yellows and greens whenever he learned something new. Evenings were the best. They would gather on the balcony of their new quarters overlooking the galaxy's spiral arm. Martin, with a glass of the whiskey Aris leaning into his side, ran chattering about whatever new discovery had captured his imagination that day. For the first time, Martin thought, "This is what home feels like." One evening, as the stars burned silver across the horizon, Aris turned to Martin, her expression unusually soft. "Do you realize how far we've come?" He chuckled, brushing copper strands of hair from her face. "From a scrapyard to here. From discarded property," she said, her voice low, to partner. "From loneliness to family. I never thought I would have this." Martin pressed his forehead to hers. "Neither did I, but I think we saved each other." Her silver eyes gleamed, and she whispered, "Then let's keep saving others too." The work they did together quickly gained momentum. Martin pioneered a new line of prosthetics modeled on the integration techniques he had first discovered in Aris. Children who had lost limbs in accidents now ran and played again, their cybernetics adapting naturally to growing bodies. Soldiers discarded after war found not just repairs, but dignity. Aris championed cyborg rights across the galaxy, her presence a living argument against those who still claimed cyborgs were tools. "I am not machinery," she declared before the Galactic Senate. "I'm living proof that humanity is more than blood or metal. It is choice, connection, love." Her words rippled through the stars. For Martin, the Institute brought a new kind of challenge. No longer was he patching broken circuits in a greasy workshop. Now, he was standing at the frontier of ethics and science, asked to lead others. And though the role weighed heavily on him every time he looked at Aris, her trust, her belief, he found the strength to keep pushing forward. Ren grew with them. His scales now shimmered with confidence rather than fear, his eyes lit by curiosity instead of hunger. Watching him sit cross-legged on the floor of their quarters, explaining alien biology with childish enthusiasm, Martin felt something deep inside him heal. The mechanic, who once thought he was only good at fixing broken things, had built something greater, a family, a purpose, a future. One night, as they sat on the balcony watching distant nebulae pulse with light, Aris leaned into him and whispered, "Your heart is doing that thing again." He chuckled. "What thing?" "That flutter. The one I've learned means you're truly happy." He kissed her softly, the stars reflecting in her silver eyes. "How could I not be? I have everything I never knew I needed. A brilliant partner, an amazing son, work that matters, and a cyborg who loves you with every circuit and synapse," she teased. He smiled. "Exactly." They kissed again, not with desperation, but with the steady certainty of a bond that had endured storms and battles and was now ready to light the future. Legacy of love. Years passed. The Galactic Institute's halls echoed with the sounds of Discovery children laughing, researchers debating machines, humming in harmony with flesh. At the heart of it all stood Martin Aris and Ren, once broken souls pieced together by fate, now the foundation of something far larger than themselves. The Howard Foundation for Cybernetic Rehabilitation had grown from a dream into a galaxy-spanning movement. Its mission was simple yet revolutionary. No child, no soldier, no soul would be abandoned simply because they were broken. Martin stood in the Foundation's new pediatric lab, his hands steady, as he guided a young patient through the first activation of a prosthetic arm. The girl gasped as her fingers flexed, her wide eyes sparkling. "I can feel it," she whispered. Martin smiled, the lines of age on his face softened by pride. "Good, because it's yours. Every touch, every sensation, that's all you." Behind him, Aris watched, her silver eyes bright with joy. She placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "Do you realize," she murmured, "you've done for her what you once did for me?" He glanced at her warmth flooding his chest. "We did it, together." Ren had grown tall, his scales shifting with youthful brilliance. No longer the frightened boy from New Providence, he now stood in a crisp institute uniform, his arms full of data pads. "Dad, Mom." He called his voice rich with excitement. The Foundation Board approved full funding for the Xenobiology Outreach Program. We're going to integrate cybernetics into cross-species medical care. Aris's heart, both organic and synthetic, swelled at the word Mom. She would never stop marveling at how easily Ren claimed them as his family. Martin ruffled his son's scales, grinning. "Careful, kid. Keep this up and you'll be running the place before I retire." Ren's eyes gleamed. That's the plan. Their private quarters overlooked a wide swath of the galaxy stars, burning like diamonds scattered across velvet. It had become their sanctuary. Nights were spent not in fear or tension, but in love, laughter, and quiet wonder. One evening, as Aris leaned against the balcony rail, her copper hair catching starlight, she turned to Martin. "Do you remember our first night?" He chuckled, pulling her close. "How could I forget you kept teasing me while I tried to stay professional? And you failed miserably." She teased, silver eyes glinting. "Not true," he protested, kissing her temple. "I lasted at least an hour before you broke me." Her laughter rang across the balcony, rich and human. And then she grew serious, her hand resting over his chest. "You know what I felt that night? That you were the first person who ever looked at me and saw more than salvage, more than machinery. You saw me." Martin's voice was rough when he answered, "And you saw me. Not just the tired mechanic, not just the man patching scraps together. You made me whole." They kissed, not with the fire of desperation, but with the deep, steady certainty of a bond that had endured everything. As the years passed, their legacy spread. Across the galaxy, children once discarded were now thriving with advanced prosthetics. Soldiers abandoned after war were restored, not just physically but emotionally taught that their worth was more than their parts. And everywhere, Aris's story inspired cyborgs to rise. No longer silent, no longer tools, they claimed their rights with voices emboldened by her courage. The cyborg who had once been property became a symbol of freedom and choice. On the Foundation's 10th anniversary, a ceremony was held at the Institute's Grand Hall. Representatives from a dozen species gathered. Children who had been saved by their work lined the front rows, their cybernetic limbs gleaming with pride. Martin stood at the podium, his beard now streaked with grey. Aris stood beside him, radiant as ever, her violet skin glowing in the lights, her silver eyes filled with pride. Ren stood tall behind them, already seen as the heir to their vision. Martin's voice carried through the hall. 10 years ago I thought I was just a man fixing broken things. But then I met someone who showed me that what's broken can become something greater. Together we built not just a foundation but a family. And today I stand before you, not as an engineer, not as a salvager, but as proof that love, no matter its form, can change the galaxy. Thunderous applause shook the hall. Aris's hand slipped into her synthetic skin, warm alive. "You're still that grease monkey," she whispered, smiling. "And you're still my miracle," he answered. That night, after the celebration, they sat once more on their balcony, watching the spiral arm glitter. Ren had gone to bed, his datapads still scattered across the table. Martin and Aris leaned into each other, silent. Finally, Aris whispered, "Do you ever think about that scrapyard? About how none of this should have happened?" Martin laughed softly, pressing his forehead against hers. "Every damn day. Best salvage run of my life." Her smile was luminous. "We saved each other." He kissed her slow and sure. "And now we save everyone we can." As the stars wheeled overhead, Martin realized something profound. Their story had begun in wreckage, in loneliness, in rust and ruin. But it had never been about salvage alone. It had been about two souls, one organic, one synthetic, finding completion in each other. About building a family that defied categories, a love that transcended boundaries. And now it was about leaving behind a legacy that would echo across generations. Their story became legend. The human who saw beyond the machinery, the cyborg who proved that love transcends form, the orphaned boy who became their son. Together they changed the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be alive, to love, to be human. And in the end, it wasn't about rescuing her from the wreckage, or her rescuing his heart. It was about both of them saving each other, and in doing so, saving countless others too.